So my friend was like, it was good I didn't marry Pastor Paul. And I was like, what has that got to do with your divorce? And then she dropped a bombshell. She told me that she had come to suspect that Pastor Paul and her husband were intimate partners, but she couldn't prove it. Hope you understand. She said anytime she and her husband had been intimate like the normal way, during the second round, her husband would request something she was not comfortable with. That is, he wanting to do the back. Yes, the back as well. But she always refused. And anytime she refused, her husband would leave the house for almost a week and go and stay with Pastor Paul. The excuse he would give her was that he didn't really enjoy the normal way anymore. And because he was being starved of what he wanted, he would rather spend time in the presence of God by going to Pastor Paul's place, since Pastor Paul was single and they could both pray together. She said this happened like twice, so the third time, she decided to give in. And she said the act was extremely uncomfortable. And the very next day after the act, she suffered a miscarriage. So after the miscarriage, she decided to confide in Pastor Paul. She thought maybe he would be against what her husband was doing. She even thought, oh, maybe he would advise him or help her handle the situation. That was according to her. But to her surprise, Pastor Paul just gave her the usual marriage advice. Pray, carry your cross. Marriage is not easy. So keep praying, keep praying. Yes. So she said after that conversation, she became scared that Pastor Paul might tell her husband that she had come to him to talk about their intimacy issues. So one evening, while her husband was having his bath, she decided for the first time to go through his phone. And that was when, according to her, she discovered everything. She said she saw intimate pictures of them, that's Pastor Paul and her husband, messages between them, and now her husband had been saying terrible things about their intimacy, that's she and her husband. She said she also discovered that Pastor Paul had disliked her all this while because of me. Then she saw another message. According to her, it was a message Pastor Paul sent to her husband on the very night she had gone to confide in him. She said in that message, Pastor Paul was telling her husband to leave her because with the way things were going, once she opened up to people about their intimacy problems, people would start putting ideas into her head, and then she would begin to suspect things, as in suspect the two of them. And that was when that was the moment her husband caught her with the phone. And according to her, she received the beating of her life. Remember, this was the same person who was still recovering from losing her baby through a miscarriage. She said that night she ran straight to her parents' house. And then she finally added the reason she decided to cut me off. According to her, at the time when I was refusing to accept Pastor Paul was always putting pressure on her husband. And her husband was also transferring that frustration onto her. In the end, her husband told her to cut me and her friends off because as a pastor's wife, she didn't need worldly friends, and apparently I was one of the worldly friends because I refused to marry a pastor. He says it's been 4 months now, and neither her husband nor anyone from his family has come to ask why she left. She tried reaching out to church members to find out what was happening in the church and whether her husband had said anything about her. But according to her, 2 church members gave her an attitude. It was as if her husband had already told them something. I was just quiet on the phone because I didn't even know how to respond to the things she was saying. In my head, I was thinking, so this is what this girl wanted me to get myself into. So after a while, I applauded her for having the courage to finally choose herself. I encouraged her to move on and then focus on rebuilding her life. But that conversation taught me something I would never forget. Sometimes people will pressure you to accept what they think is good for you because they cannot see what you see and they do not know what God knows. Sometimes your refusal is not stubbornness, and sometimes your hesitation is not fear. Even sometimes that inner voice telling you to wait, to step back, or to say no is actually God protecting you from something you cannot see.